Featured here is our Pneu-Tek true tire and wheel lift. We're going to show this in action in just a moment. We're going to use this true tire and wheel lift cage in conjunction with the Pneu-Tek safety inflation station, as well as the improved Pneu-Tek bead seater. And so you can use these two tools separate of one another, independently, but they do work very well together, and so we're going to see them work in conjunction with one another. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I come over here is we're going to lubricate between the bead and the wheel, or the edge of the rim. That's very important. If you want to seat this tire true, it's absolutely necessary that you have the proper lubrication in between there. So you'll see me lubricate that generously on both sides. And that just ensures that as that tire comes up true, that it has no resistance as it wants to find center. And so I'm going to roll this into the true tire and wheel lift cage. And as I roll it in, what I'm going to do is put it between these two stops, these two angled stops. That's going to center it from right to left in the cage. And I'm also going to roll it in as close as I can to the bottom of these arches. And you'll see why that's the case. Now I'm just going to let it rest there. I'm going to walk around and I'm going to pull this to this side of the cage. That's just simply so that as I drop it down to the first stage, the 45-degree position, it doesn't bang on the cage. And so I'll drop that down. And you can see already that this tire has begun to find true center. You have some elevation on the wheel from the bottom side, so it has a nice seal. You have a gap here on the top so that you can effectively inject air between the bead and the rim. And so it's also giving this tire every opportunity to find true center as well, so that you don't have an off-center seating of the bead. Now, to illustrate what's going on with these arches, we'll come underneath, and what we see here is that there is no gap between the wheel and that arch. So that arch is elevating the wheel so that you make a nice seal on the bottom, a nice gap on the top. But you'll also see, as I come up here to the sidewall of the tire, that there is some weight support there. And so what that does is it just takes relief and stress off of that. It really serves two purposes, those arches. First of all, it makes a seal on the bottom for easy seating of the bead, and then it also allows that tire, as the weight shifts, to find true center. So from this point, we'll go ahead and, with my handle, I'll go ahead and drop this down to the full horizontal position, and that's where our safety inflation station comes into play. Now, as I said, this is a regulated line. You have regulated air going to your bead seater, and you have a regulated line going to the tire inflator as well. Now, if you come back up here to the tire inflator, you can see that you can move your pressure, your air pressure, up and down. Now, for the sake of just seating this bead, we're only going to set it to 40 psi. If you were actually inflating this tire to pressure, you might set it to anywhere from 90 to 110 psi, depending on the recommendation of the manufacturer for that particular tire. But just for seating the bead, we're going to set it to 40 psi. Now, you come down here, you can see on the gauge that we're just about 70 psi, more or less, on our working pressure for our cheetah. And that's a regulated line, so you'll never overfill this tank. Our recommended working pressure is from 60 to 100 psi, so we're within that range. And so what you'll see me do first of all here is I'll come around. This is a self-locking chuck, and so you'll see me take that and lock that into position on your valve stem. And then I'm going to go ahead and start this inflator. Now the way this inflator works is it surges. So it adds air to the tire intermittently. And so when we seat the bead, we want it to be surging or putting air into the tire so that it has enough to keep the bead once it's sealed. And so I would take my bead seater, and I want to be in here as close as I can get to the cage itself. I want to be in line with this cage, and the reason is we're a lot more stable that way. There's no danger of me pushing this tire and wheel off of the arches. If I was out here, we would be far more unstable, and there'd be a danger of me pushing this off the arches, so you're not going to get a true seating of the bead. So I come in here, and I'm going to go ahead and start my inflator, and when it surges, I'm going to seat the bead. So I'll wait for the surge, and I seat the bead. Now I put the bead seater back on the stand, and you can see it's inflating to pressure again. It's a regulated line, so you don't have to worry about it overfilling that tank. Now if you come up here to the inflator, you can see that we have several PSI now in that tire. We're up to 8 PSI. And we want to put enough PSI in there so that that tire has enough chance to really settle in and really seat true and even before we bring it to the upright position. And so at about 12 PSI right now, that's enough. We have a nice even seal all the way around. We're going to bring this to the first stage of bringing it up. And I'm going to stop right here and show you what's taking place under here. If we come back under here, we see now that there's a gap in that arch between the wheel and that arch, and that all the weight now has shifted completely to the sidewall of the tire. And what that shift in weight does, if you have everything lubricated up properly and you've seated the bead properly, is it allows that tire and wheel to find true center. And so that shift in weight is absolutely necessary to let that find true center. And so we would go ahead and bring this to the upright position, and we could air that to pressure in this cage, because this is a safety cage. It has been tested. It does meet OSHA requirements, and so this is a certified cage in that respect. So you could go ahead and air that to pressure, or if you had multiple cages, you could simply use this as kind of a bead seating apparatus or a bead seating tool to make sure that everything seats up true. And so you could seat the bead, make sure that it has a true seat, and then move it to another cage and cycle through multiple tires if you had multiple cages. You wouldn't have to just wait for it to fill up in this cage. But as I said, this is a safety cage, and so it can be used as such as well. So this is the Pneu-Tek True Tire and Wheel Lift cage in action.